I think we can get started and people can join in between. So hi everyone, welcome to today's live. My name is Karan and in this video, in this live session, we'll talk about software skills to learn, software skills that you should learn to land a job in a top tech company. So first of all, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for attending this live session. And I'll start with my brief introduction and then we'll go and move on. So, like I said, my name is Karan, and currently I'm a software engineer at Microsoft. Apart from Microsoft, I run a community called TechMaestro where I try to help people succeed in their software engineering interviews by providing a guided course, a self-taught, self-paced guided course, and mentorship and other resources as well. So we conduct free and totally free mock interviews, resume reviews, and all on our community. So you can join the community. It's a Discord community. I'll basically share the link at the last as well. And like I said, I am pretty excited for this session. So the agenda for the day is first we'll talk about what are the type of roles that are there in software industry, the major types, the one which are pretty famous. Then the different disciplines of software engineering roles. Then all about interviews, like what are the different type of interviews there, what are expected out of an interview, and then basically beyond interview if we have time. Okay. So now the type of roles that we have. So there are majorly four type of roles, and obviously this is not an exhaustive list. There can be different type of roles as well. So SD, SWE, you would have heard about the software engineer role basically. SD stands for software development engineer. SWE stands for software engineer. That's it. Then there is a role SRE, site reliability engineer, and it is somewhat similar to DevOps, where DevOps is like developer related operations. So it is short form for developer operations DevOps. Then security. Uh, Security is one of the very important aspect in today's world, especially the computer science related digital security. So it is in itself is a big discipline and big role in itself. Then technical support and customer support, all those come into the type of software type of roles. There are other roles as well, but these are the major distribution of the role. In this video, we'll mainly talk about the first category, software development engineer or software engineer roles. What are the different disciplines in software engineer? How do you actually go about it? How do you learn and all? So moving on to the next part, which is what are the difference in disciplines within software engineering. So first is front end. Front end engineering is basically, so you are attending this live session on either on YouTube, on the or on the creator platform. So you actually went and typed google.com or youtube.com or creator.live, creator.club, right? So you actually landed on a website and that website is basically the front end. So whatever you see, whatever the client facing part is basically the front end part, and anyone who basically takes care of building all that is basically a front end engineer. Then the second thing is backend engineering. Backend engineering is like, so we are again on the same lines. We are talking on this web call or video call, whatever we call it. We are talking here. So whatever is happening beyond this front end. So this basically this front end, this website is connected to a server where, and so I am connected to a server. Then you are also connected to a server. All the packets, my whatever I'm saying, all the video gets converted into packets and then sent over to someone else, then rendered again on the screen. So anything from everything to anything that happens beyond a front end is basically part of the backend. It's a very big profile in itself, one of the biggest in fact out of the three, and it has a numerous number of applications and numerous number of skills that you can acquire, and we'll talk about that in a minute or so. Then the third is mobile. Mobile, it's somewhat similar to front end, where we have front end. We generally associate that with web related stuff, websites and web apps and all. From mobile, we generally relate to the native apps like Android app or iOS app or Windows Phone app that used to be there earlier. So these are the three major disciplines that are there in my mind. So now about front end. So in front end itself, front end is a big uh, industry slash discipline in itself. Some of the top skills in front end are like uh, React. So there are multiple frameworks that you can learn and the languages. So the very basic language that you definitely need to learn is HTML, CSS, and basic JavaScript. And on top of that, you can actually learn uh, lot of good libraries and frameworks which can actually build your front end more effective. A very simple HTML website may not be very appealing to your customer, but when you apply other frameworks like Bootstrap or something of Angular or React, when you use all these, it's much easier to build all that in a modular and maintainable fashion, right? So for front end, you can actually learn any of the technology. My suggestion is if you are if you find web related stuff interesting, and if you find that this is something that you want to learn, focus on one or two technologies. Don't go deep into hundreds of the things, because front end is a pool of technologies. In fact, from what I know, uh, out of these three, front end has maybe most probably has maximum number of frameworks available, right? Very well famous frameworks available, and it's very hard to identify which one would you want to learn. So I would say, like, if you are going with React, or if you are going with Angular, if you are going with any other framework, just stick to one or two, maybe the famous ones, and just learn that into deep. Try to learn every aspects of it, like the basics of it. For example, if you're learning related to stuff like related to JavaScript, so learn good deal of JavaScript, like closure, and how does asynchronization actually work, and all those things, right? Prototyping and all. If you're not interested in JavaScript, let's say you are learning for front end, I am not sure if there is anything beyond like there is JavaScript is going to be involved in almost all the type of languages. But let's say if you are learning something related to .NET, ASP.NET, that was there in earlier world. Uh, so you can actually do that as so just learn one or two. So Sanjeev have a question like, can you talk a bit about interview process? So just give me a second, let me go through these disciplines, and then we'll talk about interview as well. uh, then the second part is backend engineering. In backend engineering, the famous tech stacks are mainly Java, Java related stack, which is like Java, Spring Boot, Drop Wizard, and all. You can learn that, or you can learn either Python related stuff like Django, Flask, and all, or you can learn a Node.js related mon or Node.js related stack. But again, my recommendation is just learn or focus on one technology. Don't dive deep into hundreds of the things. Just learn, focus on one, but go deep in that. About mobile is, I think, one of those in the discipline where you don't have a hundred of choices. So either you'll go with native development, which can be either in for Android it can be in Kotlin or Java. For iOS it is in Swift mainly. Or you can go with hybrid kind of development, which is in Kotlin, sorry, which is in React Native and all. uh, you can actually so again, if you go with native, just focus on that. Try to learn more about detailed information about a particular platform, then going deep into hundreds of the things. So, so Paras is asking, what do in Java backend? What to explore in Java backend? Okay, so Java backend, like Java is one of the most accepted language in the backend world. So in Java, you can actually use the framework Spring, Spring Boot, or Spring MVC, or Drop Wizard. I would recommend go with Spring Boot. It's highly acceptable, highly used in the industry. If you go with that, you'll have much better chances of, if we are just talking about jobs, the chances that Spring Boot is getting used is very high. So go with Spring Boot. You can actually build a lot of apps yourself in prototype, and you can actually try to deploy that and all. So this is about a very high level overview about the disciplines, and I think this is something that you guys also want to know, the interview aspects. So A software engineering interviews have typically these rounds. One, online assessment. Online assessment is nothing but a coding round where you will be asked to code on a platform. Like you will be sent a test or you will be sent a link. You have to code within 75 to 90 minutes. There are around 2 to 4 questions depending on company. So you get all that and you have to solve that within that stipulated time frame. Sometimes they also attach other quiz based questions apart from coding, but this is generally what happens in online assessment. Then second thing is DSA coding. DSA coding is basically data structure, algorithm and coding part. It is a problem solving round where you will be given a problem and you have to solve that using data structures and different algorithm exist that are there. So this round is basically to judge you your problem judge you on the basis of your problem solving skills. And we will go through all these rounds one by one in some time. We'll go into details of each and every round one by one, so you don't have to worry about that. Then the next is low level system design. Low level system design is where you have given an abstract problem. You have to basically convert that abstract problem into a real system, a system where you have to define classes, you have to define relationship between them, you have to actually write machine level code. So this is what low level system design is. Then high level system design, where they give you a even more higher abstracted problem. You have to build a system, different components of the system. For example, let's talk about Creator or let's talk about YouTube. They have one streaming system, they have one system for me, like the creator of the video. Then they have one system for you, the consumer of the problem, right? There are numerous number of systems that interact with each other in a YouTube or a Discord or any other platform, right? So you have to come up with all those systems. What different technologies will you use? Why would you use it? We'll talk about that in further slides. Then the next round is hiring manager or behavioral round. Uh, Hiring manager mainly talk about your previous work experience, your projects, and your it's more about what you have done so far. If you are a fresh grad, they talk mainly about your uh, college projects. They talk about how do you, like, what all did you do in your college and all. If you are a experienced person, they talk about your experience in whatever the company that you are working in or the projects that you have been working in. Behavioral round is mainly about checking if you are a cultural fit to that company or not, if you actually align with the principle that they have, the leadership principle that they have. Then few of the companies have language specific round. For example, so if job requires Java, so they may ask you something related to Java. Or if the job requires Node.js, they may ask you something about Node.js. This is like, at least in top companies, there is no such round, language specific round in most of the top companies. So you don't have to specifically prepare for one specific language, but if you are working in a specific language, you should have end-to-end knowledge about it. For example, if I'm working in Java, I should have basic understanding of how Java works, how things work in Java, how different components work in Java. All the basics of the programming language should be there. Then project discussion. This generally is part of hiring manager round itself, where they talk about your previous project. So moving on, basically the online assessment or the DSA coding round. So like I said, so this is mainly about testing your problem solving skills. If you are facing a problem, can you solve it in the most optimal way? Do you have what it takes to solve a problem or not? Do you understand the basics of uh, data structures or not? What all data structures are there? Why is a particular data structure used? For example, do you know when to use a list or when to use a set? Do you know when I actually have to use a map? Or let's say if it is a network related problem, do I know when if I can apply a BFS, or should I apply BFS, DFS, or a weighted Dijkstra and all, right? So this is something that this takes care of. So my tip for preparing for this round is first and foremost, learn the basics of the data structures that are available and the algorithms that are available. Basic include learn about basic structures like array, linked list, stack, queues, uh, binary tree, BST, graph. Then algorithm involve binary search. Then the next thing is greedy algorithms, divide and conquer related algorithms, backtracking. then dynamic programming. These are, I think, these are those. Most of these will cover you for almost all companies, including companies like Facebook and Google. So once you cover basics, the next part is practice on lead code or geek for geeks or hackerrank. I personally prefer lead code a lot because I like the platform, and it provides a lot of other things as well. Like it provides discussion and everything. So I really like lead code, so I use lead code a lot. So practice somewhere. Then the next part is, if you are confident, then you should start giving mock interviews. There are a lot of good mock interview platforms like Pramp or InterviewBit. In fact, I in my community, we run a mock interview drive on every month, once in a month, where we take free mock interviews, like the interviews taken by industry experts, the people who are there in the industry for quite some year, and in the top tech companies like Microsoft or Google or Facebook, right? So the so mock interview basically helps you know where you are, where do you stand, then what are the problems that you need to work on, or what are the weak points that you need to work on, so that you don't repeat that exact same thing or same issue in an actual interview, which can lead to a rejection. So this is something that I will advise, like give mock interviews as much as possible. Okay, so Mansi is asking, will you send a YouTube channel? Okay, and resource for learning DS. Okay, I'll do one thing once we wrap. Well, once we're at the end of this discussion, this live session, I'll paste the link to all that in the chat. And if this is on YouTube, I'll basically add to the description. So apart from DSA and online assessment, the second round is generally, or the next type of round is low level design. This is generally asked by, this is asked for either SD1. If it is asked in SD1, this is for senior level SD1s, like early SD2 or SD2 and above. I have not seen it getting asked for interns or fresh grads and all. There are some companies like Flipkart which do machine coding round, but it is not very 100% specific to low level design. They also try to understand, like they don't judge you a lot on your object oriented programming skills, but they at least try to understand like how much can you actually code. But for SD2 and above, it is a must. You should have quality to handle and write large production system in a maintainable fashion. So this is what this round test. If given an abstract problem, can you write a code which can be maintained and which can be um, built by hundreds of people along with you and once you are gone as well. So you have to write a production ready, edge case handled, a maintainable code. So the major emphasis is accuracy and maintainability of the code. So this is what this round is all about. So low level design here, what the expectations are, you should be able to come up with entities that are there, then the relationship between those entities. For example, let's say I am designing chess. So I should be able to come up with all the entities that will be there. For example, a board or a piece, right? A game. Now there are relations between multiple tables in the database or multiple entities. I should be able to come up with a correct relation cardinality as well. So if a piece can belong to one board, a board will have multiple pieces, so 1 is to n, right? So I should be able to come up with all those relationship and cardinality correctly. Then the third part is stitching everything together into a flow. So I should be able to come up with a flow that will stitch everything together and actually build system that will actually run. So this is what this round is all about. So to ace this, the preparation basically involves, first of all, clear your object oriented programming skills, basics. What is inheritance? What is abstraction, encapsulation, polymorphism, when to use what, when to use abstract class, when to use interface. So these are the very basic stuff that you need to be clear on. You should understand how these works, when to use what. And then the second part is implementing that in either design patterns or solid principles. So solid principle is single responsibility, open close, Liskov, uh, interface segregation, and dependency inversion. So I will not go into detail of solid principle or design pattern. You can read about that. I'll share the resource for this at the end as well. But again, first of all, build your basics. Like the previous in the previous slide I said, like build your basics of data structure. Here, build your basics for design pattern, coding, oops, and solid principle, and then actually go and practice questions. So as far as I remember, there is no standard platform where you can practice low level design problems. But I have collated around 100, around 20, 30, 40, around 40, 45 problems in a GitHub repository that I maintain myself, along with all the resources. I'll share that. You can actually go and check that out, and you can actually use that for practicing purpose. Then the next part is give mock interviews. Mock interviews will help you again gauge where you are and what is the problem that you need to work on. What is that one thing or two thing or few things that you lack, and if you work on, the chances of clearing an interview will increase. So this is mostly about low level design. Then the high level design, and this is something that a lot of people struggle with. I i personally get a lot of requests to help them with their system design round, right? So high level design basically is, like I said, given a very abstract problem, you have to design an entire system from a 10,000 feet height, right? You don't have to go dive deep into each and every component, but you should know how they will interact with each other, how will pieces fit into the puzzle. So this is what system level design is about. For this, first of all, let me take a step back. First of all, for high level design, there is a defined format that it has been objectified uh, very well from a lot of people. So there's a defined format. First is define the requirements. Come up with the requirements that you need to build in the system. Then come up with the non-functional requirement. So for that, you need to understand basics like cap theorem and all. You should have good understanding of how cap theorem works, and on the basis of that, come up with non-functional requirements like high availability. If high availability is required or not, is it mandatory or not? Consistency is mandatory or not? Do you need partitions on tolerance or not? So all that you come up with that. Then the third thing that you do is you come up with scale estimation. How much is the scale? How much scale is going to be there on your platform? So for example, if you are building WhatsApp, you will have billions of users. But if you are building, let's say, a random chat app that we don't even know about, so you don't have to worry about scale of WhatsApp in the initial days, right? So your design changes in not like significantly because of the scale. So you come up with scale estimation. Then fourth part is very high level design, and then fifth part is diving deep into components. Again, I am not talking about low level design diving deep, but you should have understanding of what this system is about or what this component is going to do, right? And how do you actually uh, make sure that they if two systems are there, how do they communicate, which database to choose, why. So make sure you talk about the why part in every single perspective, because this is a very subjective round, this is a very subjective discussion. So always talk about the trade-offs that are there. Why are you using XYZ? If you are using Kafka, why are you using Kafka? If you are using RabbitMQ, why are you using RabbitMQ? Why not Kafka? Why not anything else, right? ActiveMQ or any other queuing mechanism. If you are using literally anything, you should come up with a reason of why are you doing this. And if you have a justificable answer, your interviewer cannot say ki, this is wrong, because this is a subjective interview. Now, coming about preparation of this, uh, like in both the earlier slides, again, build your basics. Here basic means basic infrastructure things like you should know what load balancing is, consistent hashing, bloom filter, caching, cap theorem. There are multiple things that you need to learn before diving deep into practice problems. Then apart from that, one thing that I will highly recommend you doing is read about the actual infrastructure, how people actually build it, how Instagram actually built things on scale. How did they scale up? Why did they move to Cassandra? Why did they do XYZ? Right? How exactly are they doing it? It's available in public. Utilize that. Read good engineering blogs. Like Netflix have a really good engineering blog. Uber has a really good engineering blogs. So read about that. Read groundbreaking research papers like uh, GFS, Google File System, then Hadoop, then Kafka, then MapReduce. You should read about all these research papers so that you can understand how did the person who actually came up with this idea, or the team that came up with this idea, actually needed this solution. Why did they do whatever they did? What are the design choices that they made, and why? Because this is something that you need to learn, and I don't think there is any better way to learn from the experts, or the people who actually define the industry, right? So research paper are really good way to learn things. Then again, at last, practice and give mock interviews. There is nothing better than giving mock interviews if you just talk about interview, clearing interview. And at last, we'll talk about the behavioral round. So behavioral round, like I said, it's mostly about to check if you are a cultural fit to a team or a company or not. So if you are giving a behavioral round for Amazon, read about Amazon's 14 leadership principle. If you are giving about Microsoft, read about Microsoft's leadership principle. If it is about Facebook or Google or literally any other company, read about their leadership principles first. Then there is a format called star format. Star format is basically situation, task, action, and result. Star S represents situation. You have, so first of all, think about this. That the interviewer does not know you personally or haven't worked with you, right? So you need to tell what the situation was. Why are you answering this question? What was the situation? In that situation, what was your task? You talk about yourself, not your team or not your company or anything. You talk about yourself. Action. What action did you take for that task? And then outcome. What was the result of that action in that situation for that task? What was the result? You talk about that. So this is a very well defined and very well known format, star format. Try to utilize that when you talk about behavioral round. So one thing that I will say to you is, do not take behavioral round lightly. Do not take them for granted. People get rejected because of behavioral round. So I will, what I personally do and what I recommend everybody is, when you have a behavioral round, 2 to 3 days before that round, try to write every answer. Make a Google sheet, write questions, and then write answers to that those questions. Try to write 2 to 3 examples of each, so that, because a lot of questions will be there will be a huge overlap between two questions, so you cannot make same story in multiple answers, right? So try to come up with 2 to 3 stories, actual anecdotes that you can tell to your interviewer, and you should have each and every detail, because that interviewer can go dive deep into your uh, question, right? So, or your story. So this is about behavioral round. Any questions so far, guys? So these are the type of interviews. I'm not going to go into details of project discussion and language specific, because that is a very subjective discussion. So I think that's about it. At last, I'll say practice, practice, and practice as much as you can, because there is no other way of succeeding in an interview. And again, thank you so much. If you liked the video, please click on the subscribe button. Please click on the like button if you are watching on YouTube. And if you did like, I'll share the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and there will be a lot more content related to this. So I am open to questions now. Sanjeev is asking, what course do you take? Okay. So honestly speaking, I did not do any course myself. I practiced on lead code for DSA and all. For HLD, like I said earlier, I read lot about engineering blogs and actual engineering systems. That's where I learn the most from. And I read white papers, the research papers, and it is like, this is how I learn to design systems at scale. So I will, so as a matter of fact, let me just share that right away with you all. Uh, 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 uh. So there are two resources that I am maintaining. This is my YouTube channel, where we started adding knowledge into videos, but we conduct a live every single week where we host people, we talk about them, and we like talk to industry expert every Sunday. So you can actually go and subscribe to that. And apart from that, there is this GitHub repository that I maintain. This is a GitHub. Okay. Thank you so much for joining in today, and see you next time. Bye bye.